Many of you already know conductor John DeMain, who came to Madison 25 years ago to become the Madison Symphony Orchestra's music director. Since that time, he's led the organization through significant transformation and growth. He's raised the quality of the orchestra and has continuously expanded its repertoire to encompass ever more challenging and virtuosic works. Conductor DeMain began his career as a pianist and conductor in his hometown of Youngstown, Ohio. And he went on to earn his bachelor's and master's degrees at the Juilliard School in New York City. Conductor DeMain will now come to the podium and share highlights from the past 25 years. Thank you.
You almost gave my speech for me, but thank you very much for that introduction. Also, I don't think that Jason's a member of the goes to the symphony, right? But he did, because the way he struggled but got Dvorak right, I think, Melanie, you should work on him to become a subscriber. I also would like to point out, I also want to point out that it's not a far walk from here to Overture Hall either. So if you're downtown, no excuses. I'm so grateful that you asked me to, actually this is like the first event of my 25th anniversary season, and I'm glad it started here. I was a member here until I got thrown out. The problem was the opera was always rehearsing from 10 to 1 or 10 to 2, and so I would never be around for these meetings. And then I always rehearsed the symphony late at night, so I didn't want to go to some 7:30 a.m. makeup meeting, so I got booted out. But I am happy to say that the symphony and opera have always been represented at Rotary, and I have the highest respect, and in many of my travels throughout the country as a guest conductor, I always bragged about the fact that this was one of the biggest Rotary clubs in the world. And of course, you know, we're all in some form of service. I mean, we're a nonprofit, and you do incredible work in this city. And what I want to talk to you a little bit about today is, and some of you will have heard me say this, especially people from our own organization, is how we've created partnerships with so many branches of this city. And I'm going to go through those. But first I want to give you just a brief overview of starting when my wife and I got here 24 plus years ago and moved to Madison. What did I find? Well, first of all, I'd like to ask, how many of you here, because you're going to date yourselves with me, how many of you here remember performances under Roland Johnson? Fantastic. Well, I've always characterized Roland Johnson as being someone who moved us from gown to town, but he had to do it with the cooperation of gown. And of course, that's the great thing about the University of Wisconsin, is that they've always wanted to be really involved in the life of the city. So Roland created paid musicians. He made the Madison Symphony into a professional regional organization. He founded Madison Opera. He really dedicated his life and career totally to Madison. He trained the Madison Symphony Chorus. He did everything. What was interesting is, and I found out later after being here, is that in order to improve the quality of the orchestra, he invited the professors of the various music departments, like the oboe and the trumpet and all of that, to become the principal players of the orchestra. And so the university presence between faculty and student was enormous at that time. And even though we did not have an official relationship, we actually had an official relationship with Madison Area Technical College at the time, under the leadership of Beverly Simone, who's here today, and who was one of the people who hired me along with Marianne Bowles, who was president of the board at the time. The orchestra was playing 8 subscription concerts, 1 performance on a Saturday night in what for all of you in 1980 must have been quite a milestone in the creation of the Madison Civic Center and the creation of the Oscar Mayer Theater. However, it turned out to be a heavily, heavily flawed space in many, many ways. And I had to keep my mouth shut, arriving here from the outside, and just quietly spread the word that we don't have an ideal space for one of the 10 best cities in the United States to live. So, but more about that later, because you all know how that dream came true and worked out. So this codependent relationship with the University of Wisconsin resulted in auditions that basically were, I'll use this term, blind auditions. The standard practice, even 25 years ago, in the industry, was that auditions were behind a screen so that you did not know the sex, age, color, anything about the player, only how they played. That was not happening in Madison. And I found that risky because it threatened to create a closed shop for the orchestra. And I wanted to open it up so that people could come in from anywhere, move here, play with the orchestra if they were good enough. I had a lot of resistance, but I just didn't listen. And in my first year, I created blind auditions immediately. And it turned out to actually work out brilliantly, and now today we wouldn't have it any other way. The opera, when I got here, had just been cut off from the symphony and was going out on its own. Something that, naively or otherwise, I embraced, not having had the job yet, but I was called as I was being considered for the job and what I thought about that. And I thought, you know, a symphony orchestra has no business running an opera company because it's not their main mission. And if they ever get into financial trouble, the first thing they're going to get rid of is the opera. So if the opera would be successful, it would really be able to create its own destiny. And of course, you all know the Madison Opera, under its current brilliant general director, Catherine Smith, who's a Rotarian. I don't know that she's here today. Is Catherine here? But fabulous. She's done fabulous work. During my time, we really changed the opera, and more about that a little later. We had a rather unique relationship with Madison Area Technical College. I won't say that it was unorthodox, because there are, around the country, relationships between universities and colleges and symphony orchestras. But this was one where my predecessor, Roland, was on the faculty. He taught there. Beverly, of course, is a big lover of the arts. And when I arrived, I found out that half my salary was coming from MATC, and I thought that was rather suspect and probably wouldn't last very long. And I warned everybody at the symphony to get ready for when that day ends. And we were rehearsing, and it did, and we were rehearsing in the basement of the downtown campus of MATC. MATC paid for our librarian and maintained the orchestra library of the orchestra and the Madison Symphony chorus. So it was an extraordinary relationship at the time. But I thought, somebody's going to say, what's a technical college doing, you know, supporting the symphony orchestra, and that sometime that might come under question. And indeed it was, and it ended, but it ended very positively, and we now have our own library and our own beautiful symphony offices, which is 2 blocks away, as was pointed out earlier. But one of the great things that Roland Johnson did was, we had what we called the passing of the baton ceremony. And he said to me at that ceremony, he said, the greatest tribute you can do to my time here, and it was a 34-year tenure, I believe, that he was here, he said, is double the size of the audience. So what he was basically saying, and the way I've seen this happen in my past life with other things I was involved in, he was saying, don't destroy what I did, make it better, build on it. What a lovely gift to hear from your predecessor, and it was very moving. So I set out immediately in my very first year to double the size of the audience. And the way I did it was, I thought, this town doesn't have a Sunday matinee. Everybody, regardless of their age, is going to a concert on Saturday night, driving home late at night. And Saturday night, of course, we know is a carousing night, and also the winters are tough. And the older part of our audience might enjoy going to a concert and going home while it's still light. So, and because I remembered how much I loved those matinee performances and other arts organizations that I had been associated with. So we doubled the audience. With the opening of Overture Hall, we tripled the audience. And of course, now the challenge is to sustain all of that. But it was an incredible ride. The big problem, of course, was the 900 seats under a low ceiling balcony was one of the worst acoustical nightmares you could imagine in the Oscar Mayer Theater. I said, if anybody ever walked in, bought a ticket unknowingly, and sat in the back where sound was being piped to them from the stage through tin speakers, and we're supposed to be an acoustic experience. And for those of you who are musicians will remember this, it cut off the overtones of the orchestra. So pardon my disrespect, but I used to joke that it sounded like the Salvation Army on a bad night. And so, but it was, but most of our donors sat upstairs in the mezzanine, in the dress circle. And very early on, I experienced this live, went upstairs, heard the orchestra, and thought I was in Carnegie Hall, and I thought, wait a second, we've got to do something about this. So we got marketing not to sell those seats without a disclaimer and only sell them at the last minute. We thought, what do we do about it? Well, by that time, the brilliant Rick Mackey, our executive director, joins the organization, and we decide to do a little investigation of the Orpheum Theater, and thinking about maybe that could become our home. And if the Oscar Mayer was a 4 acoustically, the acousticians told us that they could get us to a 5, but never a 10. So that certainly wouldn't be worth the investment. All of a sudden, the game changer happens. The great couple, Pleasant Rowland and Jerry Fauci, let it be known that they're going to sell the American Girl doll. For those of you who don't know this story, it was very, very interesting. I can only assume that Pleasant didn't want, she was already always giving to the arts. And I can only assume that she didn't want every organization to be coming piecemeal at her, looking for money and for help. So she challenged the executive directors of the 9 professional local arts organizations to get together to meet and dream and see what they had in common. What do we need, what do we have in common? Well, we thought we would like to have a dedicated symphony hall. Now, a dedicated symphony hall means that you would have a permanent acoustic ceiling. So you couldn't do Broadway, you can't do opera, you could only do concerts. So who would our partner be? And it would be the University of Wisconsin. So we went to the University of Wisconsin and we said, would you like to partner with us and get a symphony hall built? Their response was, and it was a sensible response. They said, look, Mills Hall, which is about to become slightly obsolete as they're about to open a new hall, but Mills Hall seats 700 people. If 500 people come, it looks like a sellout. But if we come and play with you in a concert hall of 1,800 or 2,000 seats, it's going to look depressing because we could never fill it. So we can't be your partner. So we ended up having the same partners we always had, which was Broadway, opera, ballet, those kinds of things. And we set out to build a multi-purpose hall. But it's more than just the Oscar, the Overture Center for the Arts is more than just the Overture Hall, which of course is a miracle in itself, a huge stage, wing space that the Oscar Mayer didn't have. Open horseshoe seating for the audience so that everybody can see when we do multimedia or anybody does films and screens, you can see it. You couldn't do that at the Oscar Mayer. So there was just so many things that, and the orchestra not only could play really loud, but they could play really soft because we had really good first-class acoustics. But better than just Overture Hall, it was the Overture Center for the Arts. And this should not be lost on any of us. The Overture Center for the Arts is very much like the Kennedy Center in Washington. It's one space with many different size theaters and rooms. And that means that if the opera, for example, wanted to do something in the Playhouse, or the symphony wants to play in now the Capitol Theater, the refurbished Oscar Mayer, the Capitol Theater, because the main hall is not available, we can do that, and you go to the same building. You go to the same park, you go to the same restaurant, and you just go to a different room inside the hall. This is so important and so great because in cities where they have tried to take arts organizations into unusual performing spaces, the core audience wouldn't go. So it was really brilliant to give us not only Overture Hall, but Overture Center for the Arts, and make it available for non-artistic things as well. So it changed our lives. Jerry and Pleasant is the gift that keeps on giving. Overture Hall is the gift that keeps on giving. Every time I go in there and walk out on that stage, I'm just can't thank them enough for allowing me to have such a good time for the last 15 years. I had a good time for 25 years, but this was really a good time. While Jerry paid for the hall, Pleasant gave us the gift of the Overture organ. And this has a life of its own, as we have an organization that raises money and sponsors a fantastic recital of organists that come through every year, internationally acclaimed, absolutely brilliant organists, and much like the way the Europeans do it, because the Europeans love to go to organ concerts. The first curator of the organ was a wonderful person who many of you knew locally, Sam Hutchison. He has retired, and he's here today and played a brilliant recital last night. Greg Zellick, who is at 26 years of age, a true virtuoso, a dazzling virtuoso of the orchestra, and already his concerts are drawing enormous numbers of people because the word on the street, well, he's not only a great organist, but during the course of his concert, he tells some okay jokes. So I just would like you to acknowledge Greg Zellick, who's here today, who's really So if you haven't heard him, the next time you see his name, go. It's worth it. It's just terrific. I wouldn't miss it. So that's sort of where we got to, and I was given permission to make the string section full size. It was not full size. The string section was the weak part of the orchestra, only because not every player was great in trying to fill out. You know, a full-size symphony orchestra has 60 string members, and they were basically coming from the Madison area. I threw down the gauntlet, let people know what I expected when they took their auditions. The university attracted at that time terrific faculty, and so they were attracting very talented string players, and now the string section is the envy of the orchestra. It is just spectacular, and of course that's what separates an orchestra from a band, is the string. Well, I mean, you just heard these fabulous players. You probably had a hard time hearing them back there, but you can buy a ticket to their concert. It's not too far. They play just a couple of blocks away. So anyway, very briefly, I would like, before we get into questions, I would like to tell you, I would just like to make you aware of the partnerships that we have, and I think I can do this rather quickly. Of course, the first partnership, long-standing partnership, is with the Madison Symphony Chorus under the direction of Beverly Taylor, who has the choral department at the University of Wisconsin. That's an all-volunteer group made up of citizens like yourself who think they can carry a tune. So if you think you can carry a tune and you'd like to sing, join the Madison Symphony Chorus. A group that I'm very proud of, and it's been with me every year from the beginning, is the Madison Youth Choirs. This is a fabulous organization for your kids under the direction of Mike Ross, many different choirs. They'll be with us again this year at the Christmas concert. And I've had kids come up to me who just graduated college and said, I sang with you when I was I was 8 years old, and then when I was 12, I said, thank you. But absolutely fabulous. Of course, a great partnership that existed before I was here was the partnership with Madison Opera. Madison Opera is an independent arts organization now, as you all know, but the Madison Symphony, with great pride, plays for the opera. 25 years ago, they were doing one opera and one musical at Union Theater. Now we do 2 operas in Overture Hall, 1 in the Capitol Theater, and of course, Ann Stunke and I, who used to run the opera years ago, created Opera in the Park, which has become a fantastic experience with some of the biggest attendance in the country when it doesn't rain. More about that later. So anyway, another group that took me a while to realize how fabulous they were and add them to the mix for our Christmas concert, which really is a celebration of Madison and diversity, is the Mount Zion Gospel Choir, a treasured organization in Madison under the direction of Leotha Stanley, a fantastic group, very professional, and they just raise the roof when they sing at the Christmas concert. If you haven't been there, you come to our Christmas concert. That's a great place to make a beginning. It's a lot of fun. And so you heard the Rhapsody Quartet. We have another quartet called the Hunt Quartet, which is a co-sponsored by the University of Wisconsin. They are all fellowship level players, really extraordinary. They go 4 times a year to 6 schools, and they focus on kindergarten to 2nd grade, teaching them the rudiments of music. And then this culminates in a concert, which I usually conduct at the end of the year, and we add other kids from that age group, called Symphony Soup. And it's a fun concert in which we reinforce what they have been learning all year, and we have the quartet sit up front in the orchestra so the kids can identify with what they do. Then we have something that started, this is new, and I think it's now about to be in its 4th year, but the educational department of Carnegie Hall, which is a very big department, came up with this idea called Link Up. And Link Up is a program where I think some 2,000 3rd graders around the city of Madison play the recorder, and they study themes, famous themes from classical music, and they sing in an interactive program that is prescribed by Carnegie Hall. And at the end of the year, there's a concert, and I have somebody else do it, but who was familiar with that program, but I went to it. My goodness gracious, I mean the joy. These kids have these gorgeous black recorders. They sing with these performers on stage, and they play these themes with the Madison Symphony. The joy that's on their faces, the excitement, it's a fantastic program. So I think what I'm trying to get through here is that we work up we have kindergarten through 2nd grade, the Link Up program, which is 3rd grade. And then we have our partnerships with the schools where our fall youth concert focuses on elementary, spring on high school. And then more than that, when our big guest artists come, like Emmanuel Axe, who's coming next week, who's one of the greatest pianists in the world, just wrote to the symphony yesterday and said, what can I do with young people while I'm here next week? Now sometimes, and he said, I don't mean a master class, because usually they'll do that with university level students or high school students. But he wants that next generation to be turned on by music. And he just asked, what can I do? So Catherine over here, who's our director of education, is going to find something for him to do. And but I think it's absolutely great. And so we have the partnership with the schools. Now we have a new partnership. By the way, our fall and spring concerts always carry with it a concerto competition, so that there might be a 10 or 11-year-old playing in that fall youth concert who won a competition, and then there'll be somebody between the ages of 14 and 18 playing with the high school spring concert. Well, I've been so blown away by the incredible talent. Now, I was always told that by the time you're 14, if you're going to be a virtuoso pianist or violinist, you should be already there, which is different with opera singers because they don't even start until they're in college. But I've been so impressed what's in the Madison area and statewide. So we have a partnership now with Wisconsin Public Radio, which we always did because they broadcast our subscription concerts, and Wisconsin Public Television to do a live statewide broadcast. If you haven't seen it, it's called Final Forte, which is a play on words. Final for kids who've been through quarterfinals, semifinals, and these are the finals that compete for cash prizes, and they play, and it is a live television and radio feed across the state. And apparently it's a very popular program in terms of ratings, but it's also just mind-blowing, the talent. And I think it's great that these kids who are really serious about music have these kinds of things to aim for while they're growing up. So one other project, I'll go through these fast now. The Overture Center is, we partnered with Overture Center for different special events, most recently with the very successful Harry Potter series, in which a whole generation of people are being introduced to symphonic orchestra, that we play the original score. Next year will be the third of the Harry Potter movies. We play it live, and then the film has the dialogue, and you think you're at the film hearing the original thing, but it's an absolutely fantastic program, very, very successful, and I'm proud of our partnership with Overture Center doing that. The Heartstrings, this is very important. The Heartstrings quartet that you heard today are pioneers in a program called, the Rhapsody Quartet that you heard today are pioneers in a program called Heartstrings. And they're going to assisted living and community health centers in an interactive program. They're actually trained in music therapy. And of course, we're finding out every day the power of music therapy. Go to see the Bands Visit on Broadway, and you'll see even a different kind of music therapy, but how it affects people's lives. It's just amazing. And they can get response out of the people living in these communities that the caregivers never see. And I can tell you that they are so moved with being part of this program. And and we've actually written a syllabus for other symphony orchestras all over the country who want to get involved in doing this kind of thing, and they're getting involved. They're lining up. The Links organization brings underprivileged children to our Christmas concert, and there's another effort in our diversity ambitions. And we have received an award this year from them, and we're going to be honored at a luncheon for our work in diversity. I'm very proud of that. I have, the opera does colorblind casting. We have Mexican soprano at our Christmas concert. I have 2 African-American singers in my final concert, the Marlowe Symphony of 1000. We have constant, the winner last year of the Final Forte was an African-American. So we could do more. You could do more in that regard. I would love to see us subsidize the learning of musical instruments by underprivileged kids, where they get free lessons. And I can tell you, in the cities where this is done, it has transformed their lives. They had to recruit to get kids to do it. When the parents found out how this transformed their children, they're now standing in line in Baltimore and Cincinnati, 2 places where the waiting list is so long they want their kids to study. It's one of the great things you do. And if you want to see more diverse presence in an audience, we already know from research that the people who go to concerts are people who had some kind of contact with music when they were growing up. So this is very, very important. Finally, we have our new associate conductor, Kyle Knox, has just been appointed the conductor of WISO. We have a close, many of our musicians coach the kids in WISO, and I look forward to an even closer relationship with them in the future. So that's where we are. I think that so the challenges that we face today, 2 things. The University of Wisconsin has changed a little bit their focus in the music department. They're not making all of the replacements on the faculty tenured, which means if a kid is going to school, he got his teacher for 3 years, and then in his senior year, he has to work with somebody else. It also means that those faculty members are not auditioning to play in the Madison Symphony because they know they're not going to be here longer than 3 years. So we have, so it's a change. It's a big change. And now we rely on people coming in from the outside. And I mean, we've had there's 3 people on this, yes, Naha, JJ, And is that Josh on the, yeah, and these people are all from outside of Madison. Once they got the job, well, two of them moved here. JJ lives in Chicago and drives over. But we're attracting people from all over the world, and of course Chicago is a terrific source. I'm just mentioning that the University of Wisconsin is not the resource for us that it was 25 years ago. I wish it was, but then we'd have to fund it. Anyway, so enough on that. My final statement was leaving you 1 minute for questions. In fact, I'm going to use that minute up. The challenge that we face, just to say, you know, new audiences, the big challenge is there's so much entertainment available out there, and a lot of it is virtual and doesn't cost anything. So to get the next generation to spring a few bucks to hear a live concert is the big challenge. And you can all do that yourselves. It doesn't have to be the symphony, it'd be nice if it was, but just to make the effort to go and see something live. And because, you know, if we want to lose everything that we've enjoyed all our lives, we will. But pick and choose what you'd like to see. Obviously, you still like to go to a game, so that's in pretty good shape. But pick and choose what you want to do in the future. And I always say, don't live virtual, live real. Come to the Madison Symphony. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. I'm sure John and the staff of the symphony will be available for questions afterwards. Sorry we don't have more time, but a lot of great information, and thank you for your presentation today. We are adjourned.